Hi, my name is Lisette Lutz, and today we will be creating a textured terrain painting inspired by Cristina Rodriguez's artwork. We will be exploring the ways that you can connect with nature through art. This lesson is intended for high school students, grades 9 through 12. So today for our textured terrain paintings inspired by Cristina Rodriguez, we're going to be needing quite a few different materials. For starters, we'll need this canvas. So this is 11 by 14, but you can also use 9 by 12 like I did on this one. It's a little bit smaller, but they both work really, really well. And it's a stretched canvas. And you can see that this one you can actually paint the 4 edges, which I like. It's not a thin canvas board, but a canvas board will work just as well. This is just a little better quality. You're also going to need just some traditional white school glue, some water. We're going to be mixing those together. 4 to 6 sheets of tissue paper, just regular white tissue paper that you would use when you're wrapping a gift and you wanted to just use standard from the drugstore, white tissue paper. And then another container to mix your water and glue that's empty. Another little plastic container, that way you have a place to put your paints. A palette to also mix your acrylic paint. So we're going to be using both acrylic and some watercolor. This is liquid watercolor. If you don't have liquid watercolor, you can also use some blue watered down acrylic. This is yellow and white acrylic paint that we're going to be mixing here on this plastic palette. Paper plate would work just as well. Then a hot glue gun, and you don't have to have a hot glue gun. We're going to be using a hot glue gun just because it's so fast for the video and it will set the beads and crystals that we'll be needing as well. But you can use just regular white school glue. You can use the clear version of this glue. It's just going to take a lot longer to dry, but it's perfectly fine. It will work. And then, like I said, we'll be needing some beads, some crystals, just like Cristina Rodriguez's work. She uses a lot of these pearls. And even if you have little stones or rocks or pebbles, those would work great as well. Any gemstones. So collect those, gather those for this project. And then I have some brushes that we're going to be using for painting. And this little sponge applicator is also great for stirring things. I'm going to be using it to stir the glue and the water, but you can also use it to dip the paint and your watercolor paint and add color to your canvas. I've also covered the surface of the table with a piece of parchment paper or wax paper. You can use newspapers just to protect your table surface. All right, so to get started, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to be creating and building up the texture for this terrain canvas. So I'm going to be using the 4 to 6 sheets of tissue paper here. And what you want to do is you're going to be crumpling it, you're going to be wrinkling it, you're going to be stretching it and laying it on the canvas to create some really interesting texture and surface area for the paint and the beads and all of those nice little objects that you're going to be attaching to your canvas. But how are we going to attach this tissue paper? You're going to need to use the white school glue. I'm going to use just the whole bottle. So you're just going to empty that. I took the little nib off the top just to allow that glue to really flow into this container. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just add some water so that it's nice and watery and liquidy. You want to thin down that glue quite a bit so that we can work with our tissue paper and get it to stick to the canvas. Okay, so that's about the whole bottle. And then I'm going to go ahead and add probably about 2 to 3 tablespoons of the water. I'm going to start with that and stir it with the end of my little sponge applicator and see the consistency that I get. You want it to be a little bit more watery, I guess more watery than a smoothie, a little more watered down than that. When you pull this up, it should drip. I want it just a little bit more watery. So So I'm gonna add another tablespoon. You don't want it too thick and sticky. Don't want it like honey. You want it a lot thinner. That's nice. Now I'm getting kind of like a nice little runny ribbon when I pull the applicator up. So it should be nice and runny and a lot thinner than when you started. Okay. So once your glue and water mixture is ready, I'm going to go ahead and get my tissue paper and I'm going to crumple it and I'm going to dip it. And before I apply it, I'm going to let that sit there for a minute. You want to kind of think about how you want that tissue paper to create tension on your canvas. So that's one of our words, tension. So I'm going to actually pull and stretch it across at a diagonal. So a lot of times diagonal lines make for a more dynamic composition. It makes it more exciting. It helps the viewer's eye kind of go down to areas that you want them to see. So I have that in mind, that I want to create a nice diagonal line. And I've dipped my tissue paper in the glue. This part's a little bit messy. Your hands are going to be covered in the watered down glue. And I'm opening my tissue paper back up. And I'm going to now stretch it across the canvas. And I'm going to try to start at this corner and kind of pleat it. So I'm using my fingers to get these nice lines going across. Again, trying to create a little bit of tension on my canvas. And the tissue paper will want to tear on you because it's so thin, but that's okay. We can work with that. You can add another piece to the other side and drape it and pleat it. So I'm going at a diagonal and running my fingers through. You can also dip your fingers in more glue. You can use the paintbrush to do this as well, but my fingers are already sticky and my favorite tool to use a lot of times is just my hands. And now with all of this that's left over, this is where I'm going to start to build up that kind of terrain. Think of like if you're in an airplane and you're looking down at the land and the different land formations. So think of this as an aerial view of a beautiful, magical land with crystals and gems and pearls and all kinds of beautiful minerals on top of the terrain. That's how I like to look at it. Okay, so I'm going to take another sheet and do the same thing, working in batches. I'm actually going to tear this one in half. It makes it a little bit more manageable if you have smaller pieces and they can build on each other. All right, so I've only used about 3.5 pieces of tissue paper. I didn't use all 6. You can build it up much higher and do areas that are kind of higher than the others so that you have different levels. That also makes for a more interesting piece. But you can see that I left some areas of the canvas completely exposed, which will be nice because you can add paint to those areas. So once this is finished and you're happy with it, just check your corners. Make sure that your corners are all smooth. Again, put a little glue on your fingertips. You might not have to. Mine already have so much glue on them. But you just want to work on those little edges because however you see it is how it's going to dry. So make sure that you're happy with it. If you want to add more to it, this is the time. And then you're going to let it sit and dry for a few hours. I'm going to go wash my hands. This is definitely too messy for a wet wipe. So this is the kind of project that you want to go to the sink, wash your hands really well, and then we'll meet back here and finish up once it's dry. Okay, so my tissue paper is now dry. It's hardened, and I'm able now to paint on it and add the embellishments. So here I have my paint brushes. I have the embellishments that I'm going to add. I've got some clean water. I have some wet wipes and paper towels just in case I have any messes that I need to clean up. And this is the liquid watercolor magic, which is wonderful. I have it here. You can dilute it with some water because it's very strong. So you can add a few drops of water to it. And then I just have some basic acrylics, and I have yellow and some white. And again, you don't have to use the watercolor. You can just use some blue watered down acrylic paint to paint on top of the tissue paper. You just want it watered down to get inside of all those little crevices. It'll make it a little bit easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and start painting, and some things that I wanna point out. It's really nice to get some depth using and contrast some deep blues, and then go on and do some lighter ones, so you have some different variations of the color. And to add some brightness, I added some yellow here, so it almost feels like the sun is shining down on top of this textured terrain. I'm gonna go ahead, since I have a canvas that has 4 edges, I'm gonna paint the 4 edges of my canvas. I'm gonna show you here with this finished one. So I'm gonna go ahead and carry the color to all 4 edges, so that way it has a more finished look. Okay, so once your paint has dried, I've got my hot glue gun here ready and hot. It's been plugged in for a few minutes, so it's ready to work. Again, remember, you can use regular glue. And then I have here little glass pieces, I have pearls, and I have some seed beads that I'm gonna be using to embellish my textured terrain painting. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed these textured terrain paintings as much as I did. Enjoy.